I am so freaking thirsty. Hey guys, today I am giving you my top 10 tips for making back to school easier. So I know that we are still in summer. I am still in summer and I am way out of my routine right now. I go to bed really late. I wake up later. I eat whenever I want. We get used to going to the bathroom whenever we want. So here's the thing. Back to school's coming. It's going to be here in 2 weeks for some of us, 4 weeks for some of us. It just depends on you, but back to school is coming and we have to start getting our minds together and getting ready for this new transition of going right back into school. We get so, or at least I do, I get so comfortable during the summertime with just being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want to do it. So going back to school can prove to be a little difficult sometimes because you have to get yourself back into that routine of things, which isn't always a bad thing because I really do like having a routine and being able to kind of have it almost a predictable schedule. Makes my life flow a little bit easier, but let's just face it, summertime happens and I get lazy. So this is for some of you guys who are like me and just need some tips to get you motivated and get ready to go back to school. So I have 10 tips for you guys today, and I'm going to kind of go through some of them pretty quickly. Other ones I may talk a little bit more. So my very first tip for you is to get yourself in a routine. Now, this is going to be difficult. I already know this. I have started getting myself into a little bit more of a routine now, but it's not full-blown, hey, I'm going back to school routine. I have been trying to wake myself up at 6 o'clock every morning. I know that's not typically as early as I would do it, but when back to school does happen, I don't feel like I would be as tired if I woke up maybe 30 or 40 minutes earlier. So start thinking about getting yourself back into a routine, waking up a little bit earlier, going to sleep a little bit earlier. Just kind of getting your body used to that. Cause I know for me, like I start watching TV really late. I think we've been watching like all these, like mystery shows like late at night. So I've been getting into this really bad habit of staying up really late. So it may be a good idea to tell myself, okay, I'm going to have to start learning how to just cut it off, because when back to school does happen, staying up late is going to have to be a no do, because I will be exhausted. So think about getting yourself back into a routine. If you kind of already know what schedule or what time you're going to be eating, if you don't, think about last year about what times you started eating. I think they kind of varied from like 10:45 to like 12 something. So eating around the same times so that you're not starving during this first few days of school, because I feel like everybody's going to be starving. You'll start to want snacks. I have a tendency to like graze on stuff pretty much the entire day. So getting myself back into the routine of just having, my breakfast, my snack, my lunch, and then coming home and having something else. So get your body used to it. Start developing that routine now so that when back to school does happen, you're not having a complete and utter meltdown and falling asleep in class / your stomach is growling in the middle of you trying to give directions to your students and everyone starts laughing at you. So go ahead, get yourself back into that routine now so that when back to school does happen, it makes it way easier. Tip number 2 is going to be to sit down if you have teacher partners or with your grade level, or even if you have to do it by yourself. Sit down and start trying to come up with a yearly curriculum guide or map. Now, if you can't do a yearly, because for me right now, since this is a new grade level for me, I don't really know how the whole year is going to pan out. That's not something that's going to be reasonable for me. If I was in kindergarten, I did a yearly map out every single year because I kind of knew the flow of things and I wanted to make sure that all the holidays were around the right times. So I sat down and just kind of mapped it out onto a calendar. Now for me, like I was saying this year, because it is a new grade level and I don't really know how the whole year is going to pan out, I am only going to look at it for the first maybe 9 weeks or the first trimester. I think we do trimesters at this district. So I might just try to pan out the first trimester and think, okay, well, what are some of the key points that I know I'm going to hit? I know for the beginning of the year, it's going to be get to know you activities, building that community, going into book genres and looking at books a little bit more deeply, and then starting to pick apart some of the smaller items, maybe even like your settings, your summarizing, your character traits, things like that, and beginning the year that way. And having it all written out for me. So I kind of have a game plan when you go in. Now, the game plan may not stick. It may not be the way that you stick to it, but at least you go in feeling a little bit more comfortable saying, okay, I kind of have an idea of what it is that I need to be doing, so that you're not going in blind and, not knowing what to expect. I feel like you're going to go in way more stressed that way. So sit down, try to come up with some type of map or something just to kind of guide you along with all of the different areas that you teach. For me, I teach ELA, so I'm only going to look at teaching reading and writing, and that's going to be what I map out. For kindergarten, I did it all. I did phonics, so that was in my letters and sounds, my phonological. I mapped out my math, I mapped out my science and social studies, and I mapped out my reading as far as like comprehension and what I wanted to teach. So it really helped me because I was able to go back and reference that and say, well, I needed to do this a little bit longer. I'm just going to push it a little bit further. I recently started doing some of that in my phone and doing it just on my calendar on my phone because it's so much easier to move around. Tip number 3 for making back to school easy is planbook.com. So I did a video all about Planbook and getting everything set up, and I am seriously in love with planbook.com. It's making my lesson planning so easily. It's making it able for me to kind of plan out different events and days that we may have off. But that is so nice if you get ahead of the game and you start it now and you go ahead and create your times for your classes, create all the days that you're going to have off, because I know a lot of calendars are already out for the next year. You can already start putting in all of those days. Once you get your class list, then you can start adding in your students' birthdays. And all of that is going to be placed right in a nice and neat format for you. And it's going to be way easier for you to go ahead and fill out your lesson plan. If you haven't already heard about planbook.com, I will leave a link to my video that I did talking about planbook.com, and the code on there that has the 6 months free trial is still available. So you can go and grab that and start using planbook.com now and getting the school year ready and seeing whether or not this is something that is going to best fit your needs. But I really liked Planbook because I can go ahead and start planning things out, creating my template so I don't have to go through and have to type things out over and over and over again. It makes lesson planning so much easier. It helps me keep track of my days, my events, my meetings, my kids' birthdays. Anything and everything can be placed right inside of that. So definitely go and check out planbook.com. Tip number 4 for you is a complete ebook implementation site called Edtech software. So Edtech has reached out to a few different teachers to help start spreading the word about their site and what they are offering to teachers all over the world. So here's my disclaimer. I went through a lot of research. I sat down and sent countless emails, and I even had the opportunity to sit down with some of Edtech's specialists. And what they did is they took me through a walkthrough. They showed me some of their features that they had, and they even gave me the opportunity to be able to play around with their site and see whether or not this would be something that I would want to share with my viewers. Once I got into the site, y'all, I fell in love with this site. I know that complete ebook implementation site is really big, so here's how I'm going to kind of make it into simple terms, because this is how I understand it. To me, Edtech software is like a Kindle on steroids. That's pretty much what it is. To me, it is, at least. But here's what it does, is it has a ton of features where you can create shelves for your students and place books that students are going to be reading. So my idea for using this into my classroom is to create literature circle groups using some of these books and giving my students the abilities to be able to go to their shelf fit and be able to read their books from their iPads. Now, I know some of you are already saying, wait a second, I don't have one-to-one iPads. You don't need to have one-to-one iPads for this, I promise you. This site would even be really, really amazing for your listening to reading section if you had reading workshops. So especially for those lower grades, you could definitely still implement this. It is a fantastic site. So talking about some of the different features that they offer is they have, so you can have all of your books onto your shelf it. And then what you could do is inside of each book, you can start to create different extensions. And the extensions allow you to do different things inside of each book. So you can highlight sentences. You can look up the definitions of words, pretty cool. You can also circle things with like a pen, different colored pens, also pretty neat. But here's where the magic happens. You can attach articles to it. So let's say you have a fiction book about a cow and a horse and some pigs, like it's a farm, a fiction book's about a farm. You can place a nonfiction article about a farm that is maybe a local farm and have them be able to click on it in a certain section in that book and be able to go and reference that article. That was amazing to me. You can add quizzes or responses, short essays, short answers, that type of thing. So in a certain section of the book, if you wanted to see if your students were comprehending it, there's a little kind of icon that says, hey, you have a quiz that you need to take. They would take the quiz. You can also look in your site. You can see whether or not students are completing things. So you can see how much they're reading, how much they're discussing with other students. And you can look at their answers for their quizzes. You can also create discussion boards, which is really neat. So you can, to ask a question on a discussion board, open it up to all of your students and say, hey guys, what are you guys thinking about this? And all of the students' responses can show up. You can also insert YouTube videos. So if you wanted to enhance more of a lesson and get a better understanding or give students just a visual of something, you can insert that YouTube video there. And what's nice is that the YouTube video pops up from the site. So you don't have to worry about any of the security issues. I know that a lot of places can't pull up YouTube, but this is run through Edtech software. So everything just pops up on their screen right there. So it never takes them directly to the YouTube site, which is really nice. The next feature that I thought was really interesting was that you can put audio inside of it. So some of you may have students who can't read certain sections, they can't read certain books. Well, now you can record an audio clip, place that in there, and allow students to be able to listen to the book as you read it to them, and then be able to answer some of the questions on the quiz or a reflection question or anything that you want to put in there. For me, I really fell in love with this site, and I'm very excited about just everything that they have to offer for students and for teachers. It helps make lesson planning easier for teachers. So you're not having to deal with all these different copies, all of these other, reflection and quizzes and everything. You can just get it all done in one simple site. So it is a great, great thing. Again, if you don't have one-to-one, no worries. Use it in your reading and listening. It's great for holding students accountable in their listening centers because sometimes you really couldn't do that, or you had to make tons of copies and run those copies, and sometimes you didn't have any copies left in there. So it makes it so much easier to be able to see what students are doing. Now, Edtech software does work with a wide range. They work with districts, they work with individual schools, and they also work with teachers. They're also coming out with an amazing new feature for them where you're going to be able to purchase individual books for your classroom and just have that book for your room and not have to go through any additional charges for that, which is going to be really, really beneficial. I know for me, like last year, I had One More Story and I had a few other listening books that I would do, but I could never see if my students were listening or if they were listening to one page and then clicking off of it and doing another one, or they were just kind of playing around with it. Now I feel like I can hold my students accountable for when they are listening to books or they're reading books, and I can see their progress and see exactly what it is that they're doing. So it is a fantastic tool. I highly recommend that all of you go and check that out. I am going to leave a link down below that's going to allow you to go in and look at the site and kind of play around with some of the different features that they have. I will tell you right now that please make sure that when you pull up a book, create an extension first. You have to have your extension before you can start creating anything. They don't want you to kind of mess with the book by itself and not have an extension, because if you do that, then you lose the originality of that book and you can never go back and create another extension for a separate class or for a separate child. So make sure that you create an extension first so that you can go through and actually look through all of the different features. Tip number 5 is to get baskets or bags or something that will help organize your back to school supplies. I feel like back to school supplies are such a stressful time for me because I want to make sure everything's put up a certain way and everything's done a certain way. Over the past couple of years, I've had to learn to let some of that go. So here's what I did for the past 2 years, and I really, really loved it. I went to my local grocery store and asked them to donate a few of the really big brown paper bags. I created little tags, and what I did was I just took a clothespin and I attached it to the top of my paper bag, and I had them lined up around my room in certain areas. So as parents were coming in, as students were coming in, whether it be for Meet the Teacher or they were coming in on the first day of school, I would have them take everything out and place it in those bags and get it organized for me. No more of the, I'm going to sit after school for another 2.5 hours, taking everything out of the little individual packages and putting things away and sorting it myself. Give them that job in the morning, plus it gives them something to do. I feel like, sometimes they're like, well, what do I do now? What do I do now? If you say, hey, nice to meet you, welcome to class, I want you to go ahead and unsort all these supplies that you brought in. It gives them a task, it gives them something to do so they're not just kind of hanging out and feeling nervous. It gets their mind focused in on a certain thing. So find baskets if you already have baskets that you use for keeping all of your materials. For me, I kind of put them in 2 different types of areas in my room. So I just used the brown paper bags, and I feel like those paper bags were really great because they're huge. Other than like for paper towels or Clorox wipes, but for those, I just took a big plain box that I just had, like a cardboard box that I had lying around, and I would have them place those items in there and I can sort them later on. And what I've done is I've created my own little kind of template of all the different supplies that I've used in the past. And if you're a superhero theme, you're in luck because superhero was my theme for the past 2 years. So I have some awesome superhero tags that are absolutely to die for. But I'll leave a link down to those so that you guys can go and check those out and see if those are something that you need. What I also did was I printed them out on cardstock and then I laminated them, and I just keep them in a little Ziploc bag that houses all of my back to school items, and I just take those out every year and I just clip them to my bags and I'm done. So they're reusable and I don't have to stress out about it every year now. Once you make it one time, you can use it every year. Tip number 6 is to pre-make all of your materials ahead of time. Now, I know some of you are probably looking at me like I'm crazy and screaming at the screen and saying, I don't have my class list. I know. So typically you get your class list probably at least a week ahead of time. If you don't, I am so sorry. That would really be very stressful for me. But here's what you could do if you don't get your class list ahead of time. Go ahead and sit down and write out a list of all of the different things that you're going to need. So I know for, the beginning of the year, we're going to have reading journals, we're going to have writing journals, they're going to have data notebooks, they're going to have probably a portfolio folder, just those type of different things that that they're going to need, so that you don't have to sit down in the middle of the year or at the very, a week or 2 weeks into school and have to make all of those labels and get all of that stuff done. Their name tags, their mailbox name tags, they're just little things like that can drive you absolutely nuts. And I am just the best person ever because I went through and made a list of all of the different things that I felt like you would need or use in your classroom So I'm going to leave a link to that so that you guys can go and grab that list and just kind of black things out that you wouldn't actually use in your classroom, or you can have, and then there are also some extra spots where you can write things that you will need for your personal classroom. But I've already created a little list for you guys so that you can start checking things off and creating name tags. Now, if you don't get names, no worries. What you can do is create just a generic label. So for instance, for my reading notebooks last year, what I did was I had to differentiate, especially for my lower babies, my kinder babies. They really had a hard time being able to see the word reading and understand that, oh, that word says reading. So I went through and color coded my notebooks. So I had yellow duct tape, blue duct tape, yellow, and red duct tape, and I duct taped the edges, the sides of them, and then I would put a generic label that said reading journal, and it had a space at the bottom for them to write their name. And once I did get my class list, I could just take a black Sharpie and just write their names on it and pass them out. So go ahead, create all of those things now so that you don't have to stress out for that beginning of the year. The very beginning of the year, you should be focused on building that community, getting to know your kids, working on lesson plans. That's what you should be doing, not creating things to put up in your classroom, to decorate your classroom, to pass things out for kids to have. That's the time that you do that now so that you don't have to stress out about it later. So go ahead, grab that freebie, start checking off some of the things that you need to get started and getting things done. Tip 7 is to log all of your events, meetings, and student birthdays now. Again, depending on the school, if you guys don't get this, I'm so sorry. I would be really, really stressed out. But if you can, and your county or district goes on ahead and sends you meeting dates. Like, so if you know that the first Monday of every month you have a faculty meeting, the last Monday every afternoon of every month you have a PLC meeting, go ahead and start putting those into your planner and writing those in. Student birthdays, once you get that class list, start writing all of those in. I feel like something as simple as that always gets put off to the side and you always forget to do it. And then when that happens, that week comes around and you're like, oh man, I forgot we have this meeting and I scheduled something over it. Write those in now so that you don't have to stress out about it later. If your principal doesn't send out those dates or events beforehand, why don't you just walk over and say, hey, this would be a really cool idea if teachers could go ahead and write these down. So go on ahead and see if your principal would kindly do that for you. If not, and you have kind of a general idea, write it in pencil, and then later on you can always go through and erase it and change the dates if need be. But I knew that every Monday, first of the month, we had that. Every first Wednesday of every month was warm-up Wednesday, so I wrote those down. Just little things like that you know you're going to want to keep track of, but when school time comes around, you get really busy and you just don't think about those little things anymore. So write all of your events, your appointments, meetings, birthdays down into your planner now so that you feel prepared when that week comes. Tip number 8 is start getting prepared for parent night now. So a lot of schools are different. For kindergarten, I had my parent night before my meet the teacher and before school ever even started, which was really nice because we could give kind of our expectations and what the parents needed to be looking out for before school ever started. Now I know that my parent night comes in September. So I know it's going to be there, but August is going to go by so quick. It's only going to be a couple of weeks of school, and those couple of weeks are going to be hard because you're going to be tired. Your body's not going to be used to standing up, talking, and just doing all of the different tasks that you do as a teacher. So think about pre-planning and pre-setting up for your parent night now. Think about all the different forms that you're going to want to send home. Start creating folders for your parent night. Make all of the copies that you're going to need for parent night. Get together your rules, your expectations, all of those little pieces of paper that you know that you're going to need for parent night. Go ahead and get those prepared now so that by the time school does start and things just start going quick, by the time parent night comes, you're going to be, I'm good. I'm great. I don't have to stress out about it. Whereas other teachers are going to be rushing the night before, trying to get things ready, or during the school that day, trying to get all of their folders ready for their parents when they do come for that day. So start thinking about parent night. Start coming up with some different lists of things that you're going to want to inform parents about. Start setting up your PowerPoint, just little things like that you don't have to stress out about once it actually does come. Tip number 9 is to create a place for your paper flow. Organization is such a big topic for me. I want to be organized. I want to be as organized as I possibly can. And at the beginning of the year, you are getting papers left and right. Your administration, the nurse, your kids are sending you papers. You're handing out papers to people. So creating a paper flow organization system now is going to be so important, so that by the time the beginning of school does come, you are not having 10 piles of papers everywhere on your tables, on your smaller tables, and you're not losing and misplacing certain things. So if you haven't already seen my video on my organizing your paper flow, do go and check that out, because I talk all about how I set up my classroom and what was the absolute best methods for me for keeping track of all of that paperwork that you have to do, all of the papers that you have to file, all of the different tasks that you have to complete, the things that you have to turn in, just everything that could come your way during any given school day. So keep in mind, you're going to want to have something that works best for you. So take little bits and pieces and fit it to what works best for your needs. Also, what fits best for your classroom. I know now I'm going to have to rethink a little bit of my organizing my paper flow, just because my classroom doesn't flow the same way as my kindergarten classroom does. So keep that in mind too. But definitely come up with some type of organization system and have it in place before school starts. So when kids are bringing in papers and you're sending out papers and your administration sending you in papers, you are on top of your game and you are not stressing out about turning in things, about filing things. All of it already has a home and it has a place for it to go. Tip number 10 is to make extras of everything. As you're creating all of your student packets, your parent night packets, everything that you're making, create extras for it. I had a new student bags, Ziploc bags, that had notebooks and folders and parent information and everything that I could think of. It had blank templates for name tags that were already ready that I could just write their name with a Sharpie and be done with it. Inside of a Ziploc bag, because you know it's going to happen. You know you're going to be that one teacher that on the first day of school, you get 2 new students, 1 student's gone, so everything goes insane. But if you have your packets pre-made, already done, you don't have to stress out about it. And then at the beginning of school too, I feel like so many students are so late checking in and registering that during that first week of school, your roster is going to change so much, just depending on, the area that you live into. But your roster is going to end up changing and you want to be prepared for that. So make sure you create extras of everything that you're doing. And then just put those aside in a separate little area of your room. And then I had them in a basket for the first couple of weeks of school. And as new kids were coming in, parents, etc., I could just pull that out and just hand that to them. And I was pretty much set to go and I didn't have to stress out about it. So make sure you make extras of everything so that when that does happen, you're back to school time. You're prepared and ready to go. Okay, guys, so that is pretty much the end of my 10 tips for making back to school easy. So I really hope that all of these tips were really useful. If you have a tip that I did not mention and you want to kind of give it a shout out, please make sure you leave it down below. If you really liked one of the tips that I mentioned, also leave that down below. Also, make sure that you go on over and check out Edtech software. I'm going to leave a link down below so that you guys can go and play around a little bit and see what it is that they have to offer. It is absolutely amazing, and I could not be more excited about using this within my own classroom. And as always, if you have any questions, please make sure you leave them down below. I'll try to answer them as quickly as I possibly can. And if you enjoyed this video and you thought it was useful, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I will talk to you guys really soon. Bye! M&M. The second environmental print will say the sound macaroni, macaroni. So they're getting both. They're hearing the letter name